Thank you very much for having me. And I'm very honored to share the Ping An's ESG journey, and overview of the solutions and what we implemented in Southeast Asia on Binru. Let me just proceed with the slide. So this is a quick agenda on our overall Ping An's journey, as well as how we applied it overseas. And I think I'm going to pass back to Chad later on some research with Imperial College. So a bit of fundamentals, and I think earlier, I think so he probably did mention already, so I won't dive into the details, but ESG, of course, is the integration of environmental, social, governance factors into the framework for responsible investment. And actually, the term started in 2005. As I was reading about its background, I didn't know it started that early. And only in 2015 and above that it started to gain some traction. And you see that the same time in 2016, it gets a lot of attention from the Chinese regulator. Let me just kind of walk through. I'm also quite amazed that back in 2005, ESG started as a name of a contest in whoever cares wins. And I sort of interpreted it as whoever cares about the planet wins, wins the race. Nowadays, it's the technology race instead, right? And then since 2007, China, of course, being the largest country, is also the biggest contributor of carbon. And it has overtaken the US since 2007. And I think Ping An is very sharply aware of this and wanted to take a leadership in terms of the changes in China. But at the same time, the Chinese regulator has done a lot of things, understanding that the industrialization of China, as due to cement, due to coal, as the entire country industrialized, has actually then skyrocketed their carbon emission. And the trend is also the same for many emerging Southeast Asia countries, the ones with high population, Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Indonesia, Bangladesh, right? The same thing that they are going through. And it is important not only for China to really gain traction in doing better at protecting our planet, the same goes for the emerging Asia as well. And then in 2016, there are a couple of key important things that happened in China. It's worth mentioning, right? So 7 ministries and commissions came together. Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Ecology and Environment, CBRC, have all came together to issue the guideline for establishing the green financial system in China, and also made it mandatory since last year for all the listed companies to disclose financial environmental information. The same thing back in 2019 was also a critical year of investment, both in China as well as in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong and Shanghai Stock Exchange have both imposed a mandatory disclosure on the full ESG spectrum on all listed companies in the Greater Bay region. SGX, I think, also implemented the same requirements in the same year. And from a Ping An perspective, you can see on the right-hand side, the amount of investments that Ping An have in terms of responsible. Not only do we see it as a long-term steady returns, it is an important part of our business and a huge impact on the overall China. So you can see that our AUM for responsible investment is 1.18 trillion renminbi. You see the US dollars below. And our inclusive green finance and green credit balance is 1.27 trillion renminbi. And then our sustainable insurance amount is 78 trillion renminbi, right? The impact that Ping An drives in China is phenomenal. And Ping An understands that it needs to take a leadership, and China needs to take a leadership in terms of making ESG more embraceable for the world and for China to move the dial. Back in 2018, Ping An is rated as a double B. And double B means that you are in the bottom 40% internationally. But at that time, it's actually one of the better performing entities in China. And we've taken efforts to move ourselves to 2020 in A rating, right? So if you see, there's an announcement today about 4 major sustainability goals that Ping An committed in terms of green loans, green finance, green insurance, green investment, as well as matching our asset liability management with relevance in line with the climate changes. We've also set up a green finance office that's personally chaired by Mr. Peter Ma, our chairman. I'll kind of roughly go through what are the three areas of technologies that's being, three areas of tech work as well as analytics work that's gone in terms of what we have achieved ourselves, as well as what we can possibly share with the industry outside of China and as well as within China. Right. So the first part of it is actually a platform on our own. And I think so he did mention that the very first step that Ping An did is to automate things for ourselves, right? So, and One Connect is the fintech arm of Ping An. It's the same journey that we took, right? Ping An first put in research and dollars to automate some things for ourselves within the Ping An group. And then with the intention to share this technology with the larger industry in China and then later on outside of China. So it's the same journey. And One Connect is the one that commercializes Ping An's tech outside of China for Singapore. And then One Connect Shenzhen, of course, then does it for within China. So the ESG learning journey follows the same journey. So the first platform is all about automating stuff for ourselves, and then how we manage and get improvements for ourselves to do a better job in terms of reporting for the Ping An conglomerates. And then the second one is really about incorporating what is Ping An's internal into a larger China applicable dashboard, right? So that includes really looking at all the A-share companies listed in China, looking at their ESG scores, understanding what's doable in China and not doable for China to come up with that China version. And then the last one is on overlaying our tech. So there are quite a couple of things in terms of overlaying our tech, and I think later on you'll hear some from the research from Chuck and Professor on the research piece about how we use NLP and how the research address some of the portfolio investments as well as some of the greenwashing detection kind of capability. So the first module on our internal dashboard, initially so Ping An has 40 subsidiaries of the group in China, ranging the entire end-to-end range of financial institutions. Just getting data on our own, quick enough, clean enough, transparent enough, itself is a challenge. Right. So the first thing we do is to make sure that we do a good job understanding ourselves. And just among that 40 subsidiaries, understanding about 400 indicators, getting these 400 subsidiaries to kind of input things in a standard manner online, being able to track and provide statistics, task management, being able to remind people. In China, of course, if the HQ says do, everybody has to do. But then I think in this particular aspect, being online and being able to trace and manage digitally does help. And the step 3 has the event monitoring. It reminds people, it gives you forecasts, etc., in terms of what you're doing well and not doing well. So that alone helped us accelerate our annual report, and then created a tool that can easily be used for any banks that used to manage maybe their asset portfolio companies, developers that have their assets that they need to manage their assets. As well as conglomerates, a lot of conglomerates in Indonesia or in other emerging Southeast Asia will be easy to use this set of solutions for their own subsidiaries. And then the second part of it, I mentioned about then further adding intelligence. I think the first step is just understanding what you are doing currently, not really improving what is currently out there, but not really adding any intelligence to it. And then this second step of building something that is for China has a lot of cost, manpower, as well as a lot of technology put in. So you'll see that it added, I'll just put some example like industry matrix, so that it is, because Ping An is financial institution, so there are other industries out there, and we really look at all the China 41 segmented industries, so that you have an industry matrix that adjusts the score based on your type of business. And that's important, given that I think from a climate risk perspective, maybe a lot of focus is based on industries that we know that are contributing either highly or highly scrutinized. But really for a lot of other industries, this in matrix that makes sense to give them their own weightage. And then a public sentiment adjustment. This is based on kind of real-time checking, NLP, emotional judgment. It picks out certain sentiments that the public is saying or certain experts are saying. Portfolio scoring, definitely useful for a portfolio of companies and asset valuation. And then there's quite a couple other things with regards to data collection, maybe data that we purchase or data that we connected to industry players to make the functionalities on the platform more intelligent. It also then allows the platform to then propose an improvement plan, because the moment you have standardized input of data, and then you will be able to do certain benchmarking based on your similar industry type, and then following that suggest where you're weak at and where you're strong at, to then suggest an improvement plan. And then on the practical side, of course, like what Ping An has always done, everything that we deploy in ourselves, it doesn't stay in the lab. We don't deploy something that's in the lab to any commercial players either. The first thing we do is eat our own dog food, right? So Ping An Investment then implemented this. All our 40 subsidiaries use what we have created for ourselves so that we can further improve upon what we have researched upon. I'll just conclude with two case studies before I hand over to Chat on the research piece. Right, so for Singapore, I take care of One Connect Singapore, which takes care of also Southeast Asia. And we're very happy that for something like ESG, which is kind of Asia as a whole, globally, I think it's behind Europe and US, and Singapore as well as China taking a lead in terms of bringing the entire emerging Asia to embrace ESG better and to do ESG reporting better. And SGX has always want to step up the trend in terms of setting up a leadership and the right tone for the companies that's listed on SGX, as well as setting up possibly technology that can be shared with the greater ASEAN countries. So in this particular case, SGX is already getting listed companies mandatory on a mandatory basis reporting to SGX. And as a regulator, they would like to return the value. It's a lot of efforts for listed companies to report, and it makes sense for SGX to be able to check, as well as to be able to return some kind of a value back to the companies who reports this data. So the very first phase that we're working with SGX is workflow management, reporting, a standard of being able to report for the companies that's listed on SGX. And hopefully from the Ping An China ESG model, we are then able to create an ASEAN relevant scoring method for SGX to its companies. And then this second one is on, and this is led by the China team. So, And so the China team, maybe Chuck can tell us a little bit more, but it's a collaboration with FactSet. And if you do not know FactSet, it's a company that that provides financial data, the same as Bloomberg or Thomson Reuters or S&P Global. And we're partnering with them to input our ESG factors, our assessment for Chinese companies into the Shanghai and Shenzhen stock exchanges. Then, of course, some of our technology like NLP, portfolio sustainability, performance evaluation that I've shared earlier will be integrated onto the FactSet platform. Yeah. So from this slide, from next slide is about the Imperial College research. Then I'll pass back to Chad.
Thank you so much, Binru, for the very comprehensive overview. So on the research and development front, we have joined hands with Imperial College Business School to develop essentially research models and analytics tools for investors to better integrate ESG and climate considerations into their investment processes. So last year, we actually published a series of research papers across various themes, including, for example, using natural language processing to analyze companies' disclosure reports, and then testing the relationship between disclosures and companies' fundamentals, as well as greenwashing detection, and so on. So these reports are actually all free and available for the public on Ping An's website. And this year, we have been embedding this research and models into standardized analytic tools, including some of the ones that I listed below on the slide. For example, climate risk disclosure transparency assessment, sustainability dashboard for your portfolio, as well as adjustment tools, fund screening tools, and greenwashing detection tools. And we're continuing to add to this list, maybe more focused on the climate risk side. And so next slide, please. To give you a flavor of some of our research, we actually provide you with some examples here. So on the next slide, you will see that what we did here is to use textual analysis techniques to analyze the breadth and depth of climate disclosures, so that we not only know, which company disclose climate risks, but also how well they disclose. So really asking the question a level deeper. And what we did is we first extracted themes from companies' reports. And here we covered S&P 500, Eurostock 600, and CSI 300 companies, among those that actually had climate risk disclosures either in their ESG reports or annual reports. And we extracted themes from these reports using unsupervised learning techniques. With aligning with TCFD guidelines. And we were able to actually detect which of the themes required by TCFD, so these are the square boxes you see on the image on the left, are not covered so well or covered very well by themes in companies' disclosure reports, which are indicated in the round circles. So here you can very clearly see, actually, if we extracted distinctive themes from companies' reports, the requirement from TCFD on strategy is actually not very well covered by companies' reports, but on metrics but on specific metrics and target, it's actually quite well covered. So that's the first thing we did on distinctive themes and whether they comply with certain guidelines. And we also, on the right, just to illustrate, we also used supervised learning models to create this kind of performance indicators on companies' disclosures along TCFD's recommended metrics. So for example, what are the impact of climate risks on revenues, expenditures, assets and liabilities, and capital and financing? And then we aggregated these measures by sector. So from this research, what we were able to do is quantify along these performance indicators how well a company discloses climate risk according to TCFD guideline. And next, what we did is we actually tested the performance of these indicators. And I'll hand over to Professor Enrico to cover that.
Thank you very much, Chex. Thank you very much, Binru. So the only thing I would like to add here, with the help of this slide, is that for us at Imperial, it was really exciting to have the opportunity to use AI tools to go a little bit deeper into the analysis of climate risk disclosures. We know there's quite a bit of work by now out there documenting the fact that disclosures could be greatly improved. That's no surprise there. But exploring the linkage, for example, between disclosures and fundamentals is something that is largely unexplored. And we're grateful to have had the opportunity to work on this with Penang. Just to give you an example, on the left-hand side here, you see an example of heat map. Allowing us to navigate the TCFD reporting framework, identifying areas, for example, where disclosure is positive or negatively associated with fundamental variables of interest. The broader objective, however, is to design AI-based indicators that can be useful to assess the quality of disclosures, to detect underreporting, or perhaps even misreporting. This is a challenge, clearly driven also by data availability. There was a question about data availability. In our experience, even in jurisdictions where data is broadly considerably more available than in China, you still have similar issues. So we think what we are trying to achieve here has a global reach, really. On the right-hand side of the slide, you see another example where essentially you can see how we go about using some of our indicators so as to, for example, be able to flag some indicators have been particularly important in differentiating companies that are greener than others. Examples reported here are pretty intuitive. For example, disclosure of scope 3 emissions or impact on capital and financing dimension according to the TCFD framework. Clearly, there's a lot of work in progress. We're going to make significant progress over the next few months, and we look very much forward to sharing with everyone our findings, and of course to draw inspiration from the insights provided by our speakers later on.